What's good, everybody? My name is Andy2, and I'm a filmmaker from Oakland, California. Welcome back. If you guys have been following along in this series, we've been going over my pre-production style. We went over my gear list, and now we're going to dive into what is the most fun part, the actual on-the-ground production. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about my production style, let's get into it. All right, you guys, so let's dive a little bit into my settings. First and foremost, with today's day and age, I'm almost always filming at 4K. 4K at 24 frames is kind of the standard for me. I do enjoy filming at slow motion as well in S&Q mode. We could crank it to 4K 60, and with the FX3 and FX6, we could also go 4K 120 as well, which gives a really nice, smooth slow motion. Almost all the time, I'm shooting at 180-degree shutter, unless I want to bring it down a little bit for a little bit of motion blur. Depending on the shot. And then I'm filming on S-Log3 so that we can have the most dynamic range, most versatility, and more flexibility in post. Whether we overexpose or underexpose, we still have sort of that flexibility to mess with the highlights, midtones, and shadows, and to really bring the footage back. So the film that we're working on is titled The Creative Athlete, where it tackles my early life of being a varsity baseball player, also playing AAA basketball, leading into my boxing journey and weightlifting, having a relationship, and those four attributes, having a very tight-knit relationship with the artist I am today. So the first stop that we're going to make is over at Victory Boxing, and you guys are going to get to meet and experience Coach Snow. He has reframed the way that I see production and look at them as preparing for like a fight. So all the groundwork and preparation, production work, and that's sort of the correlation between the two, between sports and art. Talking to him has been helping me with telling that story in a clean and authentic way. So right now I'm setting up me and John's usual powwow. I'm currently using the DJI Mic 2s, and I like using these because they're lightweight, portable, they charge in the case. This is our usual kind of powwow angle. And for this, typically I like to shoot 4K at 24 frames. ISO is set to the base ISO 800, shooting wide open at 2.8. As long as both of us is in frame, I kind of just set it and forget it. I also flip this over to the front so I could kind of monitor my audio as I am talking to John. And it's kind of, because this is all happening at one time, I'm trying to make sure that A, the audio is recording, B, I'm recording, and C, we're both in focus. And then once that's all figured out, just trying to have a honest, decent conversation with Coach. For this shot in particular, originally when I first thought of it, I just wanted the Victory Boxing logo as the center point. But in regards to storytelling, I think the lower angle kind of just, it makes you feel like you're rising for storytelling. If the audience is watching it from below, then they kind of figured that something's on its way. So it segues into all these other shots pretty well, but the grand scheme of things, I just want to up high, down low, straight on, wide, 50, 70, 24, 50, 70, just hitting all different focal lengths, just so when I get to the edit, I kind of have options. From that scene, we jumped over to the Nike headquarters where there was a basketball court there. I casted two of my friends, one who's a coach and one who's an actual player who plays in leagues around New York City. The script was designed to show some vulnerability on my end, sort of expressing that I was somewhat sad at the idea that I wasn't as good as I used to be in basketball anymore. As we enter into the Nike headquarters, there's a really cool and big stairway that sort of leads into the basketball court. So Chris puts the FX3 on RS4 Pro. We have ultra wide lens on there to capture everything so that we could paint a scene. And then he's following me up. And as I'm entering in, there's sort of this gate, and it kind of has like the schoolyard kind of gate look, and that originally wasn't on the storyboard that we created in the earlier episodes, but as I saw that, it sort of struck a chord for nostalgia to where I felt like I was in high school again. So just within that moment, just like trying to catch lightning in a bottle, we set Chris up on the other side of the gate to capture me walking through, both wide and close up at 16 and 35 millimeters, so that we could have some depth and we have something to cut to. And we also had him go wall to wall so that it would transition into the next shot. Then as we progressed through the script, there was a shot that we storyboarded where it was the FX3 pointing up to see both John and I in the post-up sort of position. It gives the viewer a more intentional kind of shot, because for those of you guys who play basketball, you'll know that the post-up kind of has a certain look to it. It's kind of like a one-on-one kind of look. So with it being from down under, it gives you sort of a unique dynamic. And we've already storyboarded that in the previous video, so executing this didn't take much work. We just used the FX3, put on an ultra wide lens, changed to 1635 to manual focus, let it roll, and then did a couple takes. Filming on a tripod is always a great choice, but once you start to really work with grips and get really creative with different perspectives, different angles, and just rigging the camera in places to show a different perspective, it really gives your story a little more depth. For me as a filmmaker, when I see it, I appreciate it. And if it can aid in telling the story a little deeper, I would almost always go with making it a little deeper. To wrap up this scene, I really enjoy the idea of capturing portraits, video portraits in particular. I feel like it's like a moving photo, and it's in 4K, slow motion, S&Q mode, at 120 frames. And I did everyone individually, just in case I want to reference them individually, like Alex, John, crew, B&H crew as well. Got everyone together. Now we're going to just transition into this final shot of me just crossing out some of the final shots as a close-up. I love using a gimbal to push in on things, to follow subjects, specifically like the back shot with two shoulders as the composition and the head in the center. I think that kind of perspective just kind of gives you that sort of main character kind of perspective. If you watch my videos, I use the follow shot a lot, especially on gimbal, to establish character, to establish where they are, and also to establish what they're doing, and even sometimes how they feel. I like to balance chaos with peace. And when we arrive at the rooftop, this is just like my safe space to organize my life, organize my ideas, take 5 to 10 minutes to just journal down whatever's going on in my mind, or in this case, developing a shot list for the next scene. This has become more prevalent in my process because I can have a big shot list like in my mind, but until I put it on a note or I write it down in my lab notes, sometimes I overlook some of those shots. When you're in the moment, it's so easy to overlook like a certain shot or a certain idea that you had in mind. And then when you get to importing the footage and you go and look at it, you're like, oh shoot, like I forgot about X, Y, and Z. So just throughout years of just doing these productions and getting, more repetitions, building more calluses for mistakes, I've established that I am more of a, write it down before you forget it. It could be anything from an idea to a line of dialogue to a song that I hear. I write it down. I make sure I write it down. Otherwise, it's just going to get lost in space. And I don't want to regret not having executed on an idea that really inspired me at the moment. Now that we scripted, storyboarded, and filmed everything, it's finally time for us to transition into post-production, which is my favorite part of this process. Some people hate video editing. I personally love it. I almost always have full hands-on to the post-production process. And this is where we really get to bring our story together. We get to audition different clips, We get to play around with sound design. We get to color grade to match a mood. And if you're interested in learning a little more about my post-production process, you can find it on the next video. And also, for you guys who work in production who are watching this, let us know what your tips are. Anything that I might have missed, anything that you think could contribute to this community to make this space just a little bit better, a little bit easier to operate. We would really appreciate it. I would really appreciate it. All right, so if you watched this until the very end, let us know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys on the next episode where we'll be going over my post-production process.